Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Adobe Live. I'm your host, Fabiola Lara. Today on the stream, we're joined by the husband and wife art duo, Matt and Roxy Ortiz of Wooden Wave Art. Are you two excited to be sharing your process with us today?
Hi, thanks for having us. Yes,
Hello,
we are
everyone.
super excited.
Yep.
Yes. So they're going to be showing us their process as they create an ocean-inspired piece as a part of the hashtag Create Waves campaign, using creativity to help raise awareness about the impacts of climate change on our ocean and planet. Now, before we get into it, you guys, if you missed the previous stream, don't worry, you can view the replay on Behance or YouTube. Plus, check out the illustrator Ava Radamonte as she creates surreal drawings in Adobe Fresco and Photoshop. And don't miss the Illustrator Creative Challenges with Andrew Hawkradell every weekday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, right before the stream. Tune in and challenge yourself with a new prompt each day. And don't forget, you can always replay our live streams even when we're offline. So bookmark this page so you can come back to it whenever you need a little refresh. And now, if you're tuning in from YouTube or Behance, remember to drop your questions for all of us in the chat. We're going to be answering them, so don't be shy. Join us in the chat. Matt and Roxy, let me see who we have in the chat today. We have Robert, we have Cody, we have Jack. There's so many people waiting for you to create your artwork. So why don't you start this off? Give us a little introduction as to who you guys are, and then tell us what we're getting up to today.
All right.
Yay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So we are a husband and wife creative team, and we have been working together for almost 15 years now. So it's been a long time.
Mhm.
Yes.
Ups and downs and learning in our creative journey. But we do a lot of work that's inspired by nature in general. We're both surfers. That's one of the ways that we met was in art school, as we would go surfing together after class. So Matt's bringing up some of our art here. But yeah, one of the things that we stumbled upon is doing sustainable tree houses, like illustrations of them. So that was something.
I love it. I love it. I was seeing all of these on your page, and I have so many questions about them for later. But I love these.
Yay, thanks. Yeah, we've got quite a few ocean-inspired things that you can check out on the Behance as well.
That's our little slideshow of stuff there. But we're super excited to dive into this day's post or this day's live stream. We'll be doing a whale shark image, and we love whale sharks.
Yes.
So
show us. Yes, show us. Okay, so this is what we're working on today, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us what app you're using here. Give us a little, orient us a little bit.
All right. Well, we are in Fresco, and usually the two of us will work a little combination of, pen and paper, scanning, Photoshop, and the iPad is so useful in terms of being able to take it wherever we go, and we can work on the road or in different places. So Fresco's great for that.
Definitely. I have to agree with that.
Yeah, we're kind of like analog and digital. I think everything kind of comes into play. I think like a lot of people, we have a sketchbook that we put little ideas or little notes in, and then when we have time, then we can bring it into the iPad and really start developing it out.
Yep.
So exciting. I can't wait to see this whole process go down, because you guys create such intricate pieces. And I'm just like, how is this all happening? I feel like there's so many little details that I feel like are easy to get lost in. And I'm just like so excited to see how you're like managing all of this. So what do we have here on the screen? We got a lot of whale sharks going on. So tell me a little bit more about this.
All right. Well, doing research in storytelling is a big part of a lot of the work that we do. So when we were looking into this idea of the Create Waves campaign with the Ocean Agency and what they're about, we realized that the Ocean Agency is actually the organization that produced Chasing Coral, which is a really awesome documentary.
Yeah.
We actually saw it years and years ago when it first came out, and they were on their documentary tour.
Nice.
And it was one of those films that you're just like, everybody needs to see this, how can we help spread more information about climate change and awareness, and this is so important. So we were really excited to see that documentary take off, and so it was really cool to see that they were the ones partnering for this project as well. But going back to the storytelling idea, when we were looking into things and just diving into different endangered sea creatures that were out there, one of them is the whale shark, and then diving into the whale shark
such a gorgeous animal.
It's beautiful.
In
Yes.
its patterning and everything like that, but also it's just a really amazing wonder of like scientific achievement for animals. I was actually just learning about them the other night, and they actually have like a really amazing ability to regrow partially like severed fins, and that's something that's unique to all sharks.
Oh my
the
gosh,
sharks
that's
in
like kind of
general.
lizardish, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
those
exactly.
Lizards grow. Oh,
Yeah,
a little
so it's
creepy,
kind of
but I
a-
like it.
It's kind of an interesting animal for sure.
Like lizards can regrow their tails. that
Right,
kind of
but it's
thing.
the only shark that can do that. I kind of misspoke. It's the only one that can do that.
That's
Oh,
so
kinda cool.
neat. Is this a shark that if you encountered it in the wild, you would be terrified, or is it passive? What's the deal?
Good question.
It's a gentle giant.
Very gentle.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're
Alright.
filter feeders, so they eat krill and plankton and tiny little fish.
Yeah.
Okay,
They're
so
giant.
humans are safe from them.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not coming
Not on the
after
menu.
us.
Yeah, no.
Okay, wonderful. Good to know for everyone in the chat here. We don't have to be scared throughout the stream. These are
Right.
safe
Right.
for us. So tell me about how this is coming into play for today's piece.
All right.
Yeah, maybe you want to start
Sure.
working on it.
Yep.
Well, one of the things that we looked at, we were attracted to the whale shark because it's just such a fun looking creature, and design wise it has cool patterning.
Cool patterns.
But we kind of geek out on random things, and one of them was that we saw an article talking about how the same or there was a software or technology that was developed to track the coordinates of stars.
Mhm.
And it's
It's
like an
from-
algorithm.
It was with the Hubble Space Telescope, so they're
Mhm.
they're
Cool.
programmed for identifying star groups.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
But they were able to find an alternate use for that same technology applied to whale sharks, in that the patterning on their back is like a constellation of
Yeah.
stars.
So check this out.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay. So
And
each
each-
pattern of those is unique to each
Yeah.
shark.
Yeah, it's like a
Exactly.
thumbprint. Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful. I love it. That's so like romantic too, right? It's like
is.
each one was unique. And even though in
Yeah.
our heads, like every whale shark's the same, I love that we're giving them each their own
Yeah.
Yeah.
life story.
Right. And it's really important to conservation because they track individuals
Mhm.
to see their migration patterns and
Totally.
how they age and if there's any dangers to them.
Mhm.
So kind of
things
what
like
we're
that.
thinking with this one is, and we're a little bit inspired by, say, Escher and the way he melds patterns together, and there's a transition
Yes.
of dark to light. What you can see here is I've got a thumbnail layer that's pretty light, and I've kind of just thrown that on there to sort of act as a guide.
Yeah.
But what you can see is these sharks are moving upward into the kind of the night sky that's up here. And they're moving through kind of like a white space, but transitioning into that black space where the stars are. And the melding of the star patterns in the stars and the stars on or the dots on the whale sharks are, and we're still, we're working it
love
out, but we'll figure out how that all comes into play as we move along in this piece.
Yeah.
I definitely see the vision. I also see the metaphor. Is it? I don't know if it's technically a metaphor. Yeah, like it's a
Yeah.
metaphor. I think it's.
Why not?
Yeah, I think it's technically we are talking about a metaphor, and I love how this is coming together. I totally get the MC Escher vibes coming from it. I can see the whales clearly. I can see the night sky clearly, and I feel like you have a really good thumbnail here already created.
Yeah.
Like I can already see how this is going to turn out, especially given that I've seen some of your other work. I know like I can envision this coming to life, and I'm really excited to see it all come together.
Yeah.
Now, can you
Thank you.
tell me a little bit about kind of what the layout that you have here in this fresco is? Like, how big is the page? I feel like some people are really nerdy. They want to know like exactly how big are we
Sure.
working here?
Yeah.
Just those little nitty gritty details.
All right. Well, the nitty gritty is not too complex. It's really I like to work kind of on larger paper spaces to give myself room and ourselves room in case we want to turn it into a print.
Right.
So I believe my paper space is 18 by 24, and that's inches. And then just set it at 300 DPI. So give myself that wiggle room. And as you can tell, the image itself is a bit smaller, the thumbnail. And that's so that I can kind of not feel restrained by, like, say, the borders of this piece. If I want to be able to draw through those borders, that rectangular border, and really create
Got it.
a realistic flow of shape. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is giving myself room. And then I'm setting up the page space, the layout to kind of have all my reference photos on the outside. And that's kind of a nice feature.
Handy. I
Yeah.
love how you're setting this up. I feel like a lot of the times I see people often working kind of in the full size that they're going to work at, just because they're like, you know, sometimes depending on your iPad can make it feel smaller. So you just want to full screen it.
Right.
But I love what you're doing here, kind of giving yourself some margin. And I think it specifically for that flow that I feel like sometimes we underestimate and we think like, oh, I got it. Like, it's fine. I can figure it out. But then actually having that margin is going to look way more natural when you're trying to like crop in. I think that's so smart.
Okay.
It's really cool. I haven't seen that. It's not something I see often. Usually I feel like people work at the dimension, you know, and just like kind of hope that the way they're moving their hand is, you know, making sense. So I think that's super cool. And I love these reference images just like right in around it. I feel like it keeps you sharp, right? You don't like start inventing your own movement that, you know, you kind of just like impose on it.
Right.
You have so many reference images here. Tell me why you have so many as opposed to just like one big whale shark.
Great. That's a good question. And to touch on that last question, that point as well, I think our background as drawing on paper has really allowed us to feel like, oh, just give yourself more room. And then in terms of, you know, including all these other reference images, for this first 2 hours, what I want to really focus on is the anatomy of the whale shark, because it is such a unique and beautiful shark. And because it's so unique, you can kind of get it wrong really easily. So there's certain things about the body shape, the dynamics, the proportions that I really want to focus on. For example, what is a side profile? Even though a lot of these whale sharks are top down, I might have one kind of coming in and rotating just to give a little variation. So I've got like a couple reference images of what they look like from a side profile, photos of them arching, side in action, you know, and all of these are just going to help kind of enrich the experience for me as the sketch artist.
The artist,
and really build volume. That's kind of where we like to start. That's where I come in usually.
Right. Yeah, the proportions are so important too, because otherwise it starts to look a little wonky. And I think with anything that's like an animal or a person, when there's anatomical things involved, people might not necessarily know why they think something looks weird, but it just does look weird. You know, like if someone draws like your eyes too far on the top of the head or something, it's like even someone who's not versed in art at all, like you kind of tell, like, I don't know what something weird, something got
I don't know what's going on, but it looks like your cousin or like your aunt or something. Yes, I totally get what you mean. And I think it's really important when we're talking about wildlife is like someone who is an expert could be like, oh, that's not a whale shark at all, and you want it to be one, right? Or like even like just making sure that you're not getting something really far off. Like you said, like the proportions, as simple as like having that fin a little too high up might make it look like a different shark, right? That's like maybe has nothing to do with conservation. So these are like careful things, like very specific things that I feel like you guys totally get, but we're just giving a little context for the viewers on the stream, like why it's really important to build out your references, really collect them, really pay attention to those details, because they're going to make your piece come to life in the end and differentiate it from other animals, other scenes, whatever it may be. So this is super neat. I wanted to ask you, because you have so many pictures here of the shark. Whale shark, sorry. Did you watch any videos of whale sharks to like get an understanding of motion or anything like that?
Yes, definitely been diving into that. There was been a lot of conservation around whale sharks because of the shark finning industry and the effects that has on, you know, all the apex predators. But I feel like we've just kind of immersed ourselves through projects we've been involved with and different art activism groups we've been working with. And then being from Hawaii, we just kind of like are always referencing video or seeing like swimming with sharks or being in the ocean.
Right, being immersed in nature.
Yeah, it's part of life over here.
Beautiful.
I love it. Because one of the reasons that we chose the whale shark is because shark finning is such a problem, but not necessarily a lot of people know about it. And, you know, like, what is shark finning? What are we talking about? And that's that whale sharks and millions of other sharks around the world are killed every year I mean, every day really,
Mhm.
just for their fins.
Just
So
for
they'll be captured, they'll be, brought onto the boat, their fin will be cut off, and then the rest of the shark will just be thrown overboard.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Um,
that's
horrible.
horrible.
Yeah, because the shark fin is a delicacy, specifically for shark fin soup.
Yeah.
Is really popular in certain
And
countries.
these whale sharks have immense fins, and so they actually are pretty valuable in that market.
Jeez, that's
I'm
really like
so-
saddening to hear,
Yeah.
right? Because it's so
Very sad.
exploitive of the whale shark who's just minding their own business.
Mhm.
And there's a whole soup inspired by
Right.
the only resource that is hard to get from them or whatever.
Yeah.
That's terrible. And
Oh.
no offense to anyone who loves whale fin soup, but we want to raise awareness here to what is it? Conserving whale sharks. I didn't know how to say that
And all
word like as a
sharks.
verb.
Yeah, really all sharks.
Conservatism.
Yeah.
They're all really on the menu in that way.
Mhm.
And it's just all related to the idea of like you take out one element of the food pyramid or the ecosystem and the whole thing will collapse. So sharks are
Right.
super important because they make sure that the ecosystem is healthy. They take out like the sick and the other types of fish that are would be detrimental to the ecosystem. So
Right.
super, super key. It all goes down, trickles down to the coral reefs and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Oh.
We can go on.
Population controls in
But
certain
yeah.
areas, right? And so it's like if they're gone, then other populations
Mhm.
flourish, and then all the things go off.
Everything gets messed up. We need to
Yeah.
conserve sharks and whale sharks.
Mhm.
And that's why you're creating this beautiful piece so we can talk about this. Let us know in the comments. This is a fun question I wanted to ask everyone. If you have a favorite wild animal, let us know in the
Ooh, yeah.
comments, because we're talking about ocean conservation specifically. But if you have a general wild animal, I'm down. I like sea turtles. Every time I see them, I'm just
Ooh,
like
yeah.
so enamored by them. They're so cute. They live so long.
Mhm.
They
I love
do.
it.
We do
I
love
love them as a concept, even though I've probably only seen them like at a zoo or something. But
Oh,
Still.
yeah. We love
Yeah.
turtles.
No, they're
I
amazing.
feel like you guys probably get some natural exposure to sea turtles. Am I right?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
Green sea turtles and hawksbill turtles are here in Hawaii, and so they're really frequently seen here. Actually, our kiddo is 5 years old, and
Yeah.
he finally got to that point where he let us put a mask over his face, to go snorkeling. And so now he ducks his head underwater and sees the fish, and it's totally blown his mind.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
we've told him it would, the past few
Yeah.
years, but he didn't believe us. And now all
Because he
wants
couldn't
to
see it
do
for
is go
himself. He
snorkeling.
couldn't see it for himself. How was he supposed to
Right.
know how wonderful it would be? I mean, even myself, I feel like I watched, what is it? Is it Disney or Pixar, the Finding Nemo movie? And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. But until I saw it when I went snorkeling, I didn't realize exactly how like real it is. Because
Okay.
to me, it's like mythical almost, because I don't
Where
have
did you
any
see-
exposure.
Where did you see a turtle? Where did you go?
I don't know if I saw a turtle. I think I saw some in real, like in
Mhm.
nature.
Mhm.
I was out in Mexico swimming somewhere. I can't remember the exact. It might have been
Whoa.
Cozumel.
Mhm.
And it was
Oh,
clear
yeah.
enough water that I saw like real sea life. I saw like wild fish and what's it called? I'm
Yeah.
forgetting the name. Horses.
Seahorses.
Yeah.
Sea
Oh, they're
fish.
so cute.
And once I saw them, I was like, wow, this is real. Like they are not just like drawings or, animated movies. So I
Right.
feel
It
like
makes it much more
people
relatable.
really need that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because once you see it out in the wild, you're like, how could I be harming these animals?
Mm.
Yeah. Is there any animal aside from the whale shark native to Hawaii that you feel really passionate about?
Ooh, yeah.
Well, turtles are definitely up there.
Turtles are up there.
Because you see them a lot. They turtles have to come up for air, so that's when you'll see them. I mean, that's the thing about
Maybe
the
the
ocean, right? That's my
right.
favorite. Yeah. But one thing I was going to say about what you just mentioned in conservation is that people will go to national parks and see the deer and that kind of thing, but the ocean for a lot of people, it's just kind of this flat surface. Unless you go under, you don't get to see that wildlife. But the diversity underwater is just as rich, if not more
greater,
species below the surface, but it's so rarely seen, and some of it we'll never see because it's just so deep.
Right.
So that's why it's so important for these kind of awareness things. But yeah, speaking of a favorite animal, the ray, like the stingray, is one of my
Or
favorites.
manta ray.
Oh,
Manta ray is
so
a nice
they
one.
are really
Yeah.
like crazy when you see them. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel that way about
Fine.
all sea life, right? Because they don't have legs, right? It's not
Yeah.
like a chipmunk that is like normal in my mind. It's
They're like
so
aliens.
otherworldly. Yeah,
Yeah.
under the sea is like another world, and you're so right. Stingrays are super super crazy. I grew up in Florida, and we had manatees
Yeah,
and
manatees.
alligators. And manatees are so cute, and they're endangered too, I believe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's so sad because they're so like gentle. You're just like, how's anyone hurting you?
Right.
And that's the thing too. I think the manatees are having the same issue with whale sharks. Is a lot of times they're also getting boat strikes,
Mhm.
so they're just getting hit by motor boats, and
It's
and
the
that
saddest
takes
thing
a
when
lot
you
of
see
them
it.
out.
A manatee just like all marked up. You're just
Marked
like,
up,
you
yeah.
sweet little baby. You were
Oh
just
no!
minding your
Yeah.
own business, being a manatee.
Eating kelp.
Yeah,
or
doing what you
seaweed.
do, and you get hurt. It's so rude.
I know.
Yes, everyone in the comments is telling us they love seahorses.
Ooh.
People are
Horses.
saying deer, which you mentioned earlier. So I love all these wild animals. Everyone keep commenting your wild animals. And if you have any questions for these two, drop them in the comments too, because we're keeping an eye on the chat. Don't be shy. Bring us your questions.
Think- Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, no, I wanted to ask you, tell me what you're doing here in this piece. So we're on Adobe Fresco on the iPad.
Yeah.
What tools are you using and
Right.
why?
Okay, I'm just pretty much keeping it simple right now because we're in the sketch phase,
Yes.
and I am just using pencil and an eraser. One thing I like to do is I'll have a keyboard Bluetooth to the
Okay.
iPad, and that way I can kind of just toggle between, B for brush, and then you can hit B again, and it'll switch it to the next brush that you have, in your queue. And
That's
if you get
super
hit back to
handy. I
E-
haven't seen anyone work like that on
Really?
at least on
Oh.
the stream. I haven't.
Okay.
I've seen people talk about working this way,
on the
like
street, that's how we
on
work.
YouTube and stuff like that. But on the stream, you're using it, and
Yeah.
that explains so much because I haven't seen you frantically tapping.
Oh yeah, you don't see me doing this. Yeah.
Yes.
I always try and find out those shortcuts. Whether it's on Photoshop, a lot of people are probably using the shortcuts in Photoshop because you have to.
Yes.
But you can do the same thing on the iPad. So I
love
highly
it.
suggest
This
people
is
do it
such a
inside.
cool tip, you guys. If you work on your iPad, which you should be, because we're
Mhm.
showing you how great it is to work on Fresco. Also, use a little keyboard to toggle between these shortcuts so you save yourself those pencil.
Nothing
moments.
complicated. Pretty cheap. It's
I
really
love
just
it.
there.
That's so handy. You're just being
Smaller
way
the
more
better.
effective.
Yeah.
So, can you show us which pencil you're using? I feel
Sure.
like people are always very nosy about which
Yeah.
brush you're using. Which brush you're using.
I feel like a little underwhelming, and I apologize if there's no custom brushes that I've made here, but it's just a regular pencil, 10 pixels. I do have in my recent, I have this chunk brush. I just like
Chunk
the
brush.
sound of it. And then when I tried it out, I was like, well, this could be nice to lay down a star layer. It
Nice.
sort of
Yes,
gives
yes,
a little,
yes.
you see how it has that texture?
Giving us a little bit of texture
Mm.
so it's not totally flat.
Right. And that'll be on a separate layer. So I'm just undo that with my keyboard. And then,
Magician.
right.
Yes,
And
totally.
This is all the reason I'm just working with pencil and that I have that chunk brush is I want this to, like, when this is finished, it won't really have a vector clean crispness to it. I do want to sort of bring about like a texture and almost like a sumi ink
Got it. Okay.
organic feel to it or something like
Mhm.
that. Like you could reach out and touch the paper and feel it.
And why do you think you prefer that over working with like vector? I mean, I
Mhm.
too prefer to work in raster because of the texture.
Yeah.
But why do you think that is for your work, that you're so attracted to like the raster, the pixel brushes?
Yeah, I think it's mainly because of our background as artists who usually would do paintings. We do murals. I honestly really still love to draw with pencil on paper because I love
Yes.
the resistance. But the reality is that we're in our art studio. We have all these pencils and pens and fun things that we used to use,
but don't
now
use much anymore.
it's like iPad, do the sketch on the iPad. I have a time lapse. I can just send it off to the client via a text message or email. Like it's just so convenient. So
I
guess
have
that's
to
it.
agree with you. Yeah. But at least you're kind of staying true to what you like about your own artwork when you work traditionally, which is that texture, the richness that it gives you, how it gives you more depth to work with those tools as opposed to like a flat vector brush. So I totally feel you, and I agree. I have a lot of art tools that sadly don't get used as much because the iPad is just so handy. It's just kind of
awesome.
It becomes a no-brainer after a while, especially when like a client wants to change or make an edit. If you were working traditionally, can you imagine like having to redo the whole thing?
They were not fun.
We do.
I think that's the funny thing about us, like having worked so long as we were in the analog transition to digital, like the pre-iPad and now having the iPad. So it's like we really appreciate all the brushes that are available and like these apps that you can use. Just like mind-blowing how things have changed so quickly.
I mean, even the amount of scanning we used to do, because to build textures into a piece in Photoshop, I would literally go and do a watercolor side thing, and she would do some washes, and then we'd scan it,
them,
overlay it,
multiply or whatever other thing.
Now with our phones, we'll just take a picture of the texture out in the world and upload that through the Adobe color app that I have.
Is it Adobe Capture?
Yes, Capture. I love Capture.
It's my favorite. I feel like it does not get enough love. Adobe Capture is so handy. If you're if you're watching the stream right now, you never heard of Adobe Capture. You have to check it out. Maybe Cody can drop the link in the chat, but like you said, it allows you to capture textures and colors. I don't know if you've tried it yourself, but have you tried it? It can grab like fonts in the wild.
Yes, I've noticed that. Yeah, in the wild.
It's so cool.
Fonts. I like that.
Yes, yeah. You know, when you see something at like a grocery store and you're like, that's a cool font. Maybe I want that. Or at a museum. Sometimes I'll grab fonts from museums. It's cool.
Yeah, or the colorways. I really like how you can just take a picture and then it'll like boop, 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 and it'll arrange like 5 colors. And it does a really good job of like picking
5 nice colors. I know. And then it'll bring them right into the app. So if you're using, I think you can have it show up in Fresco, but I know you can definitely have it show up in Photoshop, all your colors automatically, which is like, definitely makes you feel like you're living in the future. This is what the phone was meant for, to capture the colors that I want in the wild and bring them to my iPad for later.
No, because before it's like you'd take a picture of something and then you'd have to remember it later, and then maybe the picture wasn't an accurate capture of what the thing you actually
colors were.
Or you're just like, or you're trying to, I know for us, we would like text each other photos or like write little notes through text, and it's actually a horrible way to keep track of things. Like you think like, oh yeah, it'll be in the text feed somewhere, but you don't realize how much you actually text, so you're just scrolling.
You're just scrolling just like, forever.
Where's that picture? When was that? Last year of that thing that we saw?
No, like, we have a lot of our ideas terrible. So it's funny, like we're right next to each other right now, but in day to day, like I could be in the garage, we could be in different studios or whatnot, but we get an idea and then we'll text each other
so that we don't forget.
I don't know how many great ideas we've had that have just been lost
to this ether of text.
I don't know.
I love it. Like, I feel like that's such a funny, right? Because you guys are mixing work and life, personal life. So in this, you guys have to have 2 separate text threads, which I don't even know if it's possible. But it's like a work thread and a personal life thread, because otherwise you're getting your colors mixed with what's for dinner, mixed with like, the grocery list.
Pick the kid up from school.
It gets crazy. So speaking of this, balance between your professional and your personal relationship, how do you guys find balance or what works for you as an art duo that works together, right? Because you guys work together as Wood and Wave.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's not easy, especially because we're both artists and we're both painters and drawers, and so to figure out a style that kind of combines both of our interests and subject matter that we're both into, I think the subject matter was the easiest part because we're both drawn to the same type of things, and we had the same artists that we were inspired by. For example, Thomas Campbell, Swoon, who's a like wheat paste graffiti artist. Jay Ryan, who comes from the Chicago poster scene.
Yeah, poster scene in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I always like when I listen to other artists talking when they drop who they're inspired by, so I can go and look up those people.
Yes, exactly. I'm sure everyone's going to be looking up these people, and if they haven't heard of them already.
Yeah,
so I appreciate that you're being generous with your inspiration.
Oh yeah.
Oh, thanks. No, we got to shout out artists that inspired us, right? We're always standing on the shoulders of people who came before us. But yeah, when we mentioned Jay Ryan, so when we say like poster scene, it's kind of like music tour posters, that kind of thing. Screen printing, it was actually a big part of our kind of education in college, and helped us to develop kind of like a graphic style.
Right.
I think like a lot of art students or like surfer kids, skater kids, we started off with a t-shirt brand in the beginning.
Yeah, we want to have our own.
Yes, I love that you mentioned that. That
was
is like the beginning, right? Because you can't afford the ones that are out there. So you're like, oh, I'll just make. First you start with knockoffs, and then you're like, wait, I can make my own original designs.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And it's like this idea of, you know, seeing your artwork on a t-shirt is just like really fun to see like your friends wearing them. And then we started putting them in a bunch of stores. So then we would see strangers out on, you know, in town wearing it.
Special. That is so special.
Yeah.
They don't know that that's me.
I know.
Right?
Walk up to them
get all
and
excited.
be like, hey, that's a really nice shirt, man. Like, looks good on you.
I never did that.
I love it though. No, you have to put yourself on. You have to do that. You have to be, you know, excited about your own brand. But I love to know that that was like something that you guys mutually got excited about and worked together on. I'm assuming, but correct me.
That was our first venture together. And then we kind of realized that, you know, when you're artists and you both kind of have your ideas of what, you know, art should look like, that's when the ego can get in the way, right? And so you have to learn, like, what do I want to compromise on? And I think it goes for like romantic relationships or parental relationships or like any kind of working relationship, but there's always something that the other person or entity cares about more. And then there's always something that you care about more than what they care about, you know? So it's like, which hill are you going to stand on? Yeah, you know, so it's like, we might be painting a mural and he's like, oh, let's paint that blue. And I'm like, no, I was thinking that would be green, you know? And then he's like, I really, really think that should be blue. And then I'm like, I actually don't really care that much. So okay, let's make it blue, you know?
That's the oversimplification of the conversation, but that's basically it in a nutshell.
To make it short.
We know each other's kind of like, I guess the audio like signifiers that she's really
hanging on to this.
Like, there's a language that's kind
she's
of
not gonna get over that. So
and vice versa, you know. She's like, okay, he's really digging his heels in on this one, but knowing that they're like, okay, I'm not gonna just fight this for the sake of winning an argument.
But you might take that moment to be like, okay, if that's gonna be this.
You may barter.
I want this to be you know,
Got it. I feel like what you're describing is the client artist relationship, but also now you guys are also the clients to each other, right? Because you're like bouncing the idea, the execution, any decision making between each other, aside from the client who might have an influence as well.
Right. Yeah. For example, like, you know, they might have a deadline, you know, can we get it in by this date? And you like, yes, that is possible. However, you had talked about how you wanted to include this in the piece. Given this newer timeline, that wouldn't be possible, you know, to have it do a week earlier or something like that. Right.
Like we can't cross-hatch all this stuff manually in one day on a mural.
Right.
So no.
Totally.
Got it. I love it. And so you guys are able to kind of, so what you're telling me is you guys like compromise on this decision making in your artwork, but how would you say it's beneficial to be working in a duo? Because what I'm hearing is like, to work in a duo you need to compromise, but what are the perks of working in a duo that would make you want, you know, because you guys could be working separately.
Totally. I think the benefit for sure is it definitely gives us confidence that we can figure things out
Mhm.
faster because you're not just doing it alone. You know,
Mhm.
like we're quick to
Yes.
say yes to projects that we might not have done
Mhm.
before because we're like, there's 2 of us, we'll figure it out. You know?
Yes, like if one of us isn't a pro at that, maybe
Right.
the other one can figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah. And then
I love that.
and we've also figured out too, like I'm a painter, but I'm not the best drawer. So Matt is always the drawer. So you'll notice that my hands are free because I'm not drawing.
Got it.
Yeah. So I've over the years taken over more the role of like art director, project manager, I don't know, CEO, like
Yeah.
business visionary, you know, like
I think ideation is probably
Yeah,
Roxy's a
ideation.
lot of times her strong suit, whereas mine is just like, oh, tell me what to do. I'll just focus on drawing sharks for the next 2 hours.
Executing. Yes. Well, that is 2 different parts of the process, right? Because like
Yeah.
brainstorming, yeah, sometimes I really dread brainstorming, but once you have the concept, it's a lot easier for me to
get going.
Yeah.
Right.
finish it all the way through. And sometimes it's vice versa. So it's really cool that
Mhm.
you guys can kind of divide the artistic labor, right? Because it is a lot.
Proper.
It is a lot of labor. So
Yeah.
I love hearing about this division. It's so
fun.
neat.
I think it's actually played to both our strengths because my passion is the idea process. Like I get excited. I love diving into the research and figuring out like what are some fun
Mhm.
like Easter eggs that we can hide into this piece. You know, what place are we doing a mural at? Like what is the history of this place? What are the cultures of this place? Is there anything cool that we might be able to include in there?
Mhm.
We did a mural that was on the side of a ice cream shop. So in the mural, we were able to include some ice cream, so just
So
like
cute.
looking for, even though we weren't doing the mural for the ice cream shop, that just happened to be the location of where the mural festival was. Like as just like a fun hidden tribute, we were able to include some things from the ice cream
The
shop
location,
and things that they
yes.
had in there. And so the owners were just really
You know what
stoked.
else is really cool, and I don't think we talk about it too often, but the fact that there's 2 of us when we're working on murals are a very public display of art, and which is why we love it, because of it allows people to see process. But a lot of times too, and this is great, people will come up and they'll want to ask questions and they'll want to talk. And when you're on a deadline with a project, with a mural, like when you slow down, you really feel it. Like the project is log.
Yeah.
So having 2 people allows one of us, whoever's closest, to keep working, and the other person can field questions and do the things that we love to do, like connect with the audience.
Yeah.
That is so true. Because otherwise you have to have kind of like a friend
Oh,
who maybe kind of gets what's going on. You
Right.
throw them out there to the wolves. So I
what
think
a lot of
that's
mural
super
artists
cool.
Yeah, what a lot of mural artists do will have those big headphones,
Yeah.
so that even if they're not on, it just kind of sends the signal like, "Hi, I'm working."
busy.
Like,
Yeah,
don't touch me.
this is a working moment.
Yeah.
It's
Doesn't
not
always
fun.
It's very stressful. I think a lot of people see mural festivals as like something super cool and like exciting, which it is, but it's also very stressful because you have a week or less to create a mural, and then that's kind of the deadline. A lot of times you're flown into another place. We're based
that's
in
a
Hawaii.
lot of pressure.
Yeah, we're based in Hawaii, but we have murals, in a bunch of different states, as far from us as Worcester, Massachusetts. And so, our plane flight is a certain day to come back, and the festival ends. So we need to have that mural done within 5 or 6 days. And so if we get taken away, 20 minutes of a conversation here,
Right.
there,
it
It
can add
all
up.
chips away. It all
add
chips
up.
away at your working time. And I think it's really cool that you guys have like some built-in manual labor, right? Because it's 2 of you, I'm
Right.
assuming, for one mural, which
Yeah.
is already way better
Yeah.
than one person having to maybe hire someone to help them out. Or maybe
Right.
you guys hire people too if it's a really big mural anyway. But at least you have 2 people kind of devoted and aligned with the mission, right? As opposed to like
Right.
me, if I were to ask my partner, he would do it, but like we're not, he doesn't know the intricacies of why I picked yellow over the other color and like
Right.
why this is very specific, and you got to stick to the plan, so like I like that you guys can be like this coordinating duo and tackle those bigger projects together. Kind of just naturally having a little bit of an advantage. So I think that's super cool.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, especially because
I'm
we
inspired.
really like detail. Yeah. we love details, so we really like to get in there and put as much as possible, which means that it always takes a really long time.
Exactly.
So it's
No, you
like-
guys' work is so intricate. I mean, you're creating, I know you have this piece is pretty intricate. There's a lot of, I can see you going into a lot of line work here, but even in some of the other pieces that you showed earlier, everything has a ton of detail. And so I'm sure having that second eye is really helpful, just to tell you like, that's working, that's not working, too much detail, not enough detail. So how do you guys work with each other to give each other that feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact, like when you said having that second eye, that second set of eyes is like one of the more important things for me, because like I said, I really focus in on details and I don't often zoom out and really think about the project as a whole, the context. I really just dive into, like right now, I'm so interested in the anatomy, and I come from like a background of figure drawing. So I love building the structure of the whale shark, and I can just do this, for hours without really keeping in mind timelines or color schemes or even just the narrative of the piece. And so that's where Roxy is
To it.
be like, hey, snap out of it, And for me as an artist, every artist kind of carries probably their own ego, whether or not they acknowledge it or not. And I acknowledge that I still am always like defensive about the work that I've done if it's been a lot of work. And I'll be like, no, it's fine, like
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Would,
And she's
yeah.
like,
But then I just know to like allow myself to feel a little grumpy about something like that, which she said, and then just let it sit. And then it percolates, and then I realize, oh shoot, she's probably
Do you feel like you guys
right.
have to be more careful with how you give feedback, because you have to deal with the other person the rest of the day, let's say, right? As opposed to like if I'm someone's coworker at an office and I say, I think this paper like isn't very good. Can you redo it? Bye.
Right.
And you go home and everyone does their own thing and you come back the next day. Are you guys fitting in breaks from each other? Like what's going on after some feedback, some hard feedback?
This is a great therapy session. It's like a dual purpose here.
Thank you.
We're on the couch here. No, it's great questions.
Yeah. No, I think
I'm just wondering because it's a lot more of a
right.
like you're at, you can't separate work and life as much.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a weird ability, but we spend like all day together, every day together, and somehow it works. But I think for sure we've learned over time like how to give feedback to each other without like being insulting. Or I think that's the danger actually of being so close, is that you don't have the formality that you would necessarily have with a coworker. Like, hi, I noticed that this thing is
the niceties
might be missing. You have a certain way that you work with coworkers, because you can't just be like, dude, fix that thing. Like, hello, don't be stupid.
What are you doing?
When you're formal with each other, even like a friend or something, you're just like, what were you thinking? Blah, 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 blah. So, we've learned over the years, like how to say things in a way that's like not personally insulting. Like, we're just talking about the art here. I'm not
right. This is just about the client. This is not about how you overdo every line. This is not about that.
No,
Right.
and to Roxy's credit, I will say she's really good at that. She's even with our kid, like in dealing with those certain situations, she's very level, even keel. And if anything, I'm probably more of the, I know I am more of the reactionary.
We're getting a lot of truths coming
No,
out
I
here.
am. And so I need to work always on just being aware of the fact that, you're going to like initially feel offended a little bit and like defensive. But then I take a step back and I realize the way she approached her feedback was always pretty measured. And I gotta be like, oh man, don't be a jerk.
It's hard when you're like,
Right.
I recognize that it's hard when you're stressed out and you're
Yeah.
under a deadline and you've worked hard on something because you've kind of got lost
I get
in a place that
Oh,
it's hard to
baby.
bring yourself out and like realize like, oh man, I have to do this other stuff too. And it's like, because it's like, well, if you hadn't spent an hour doing this part, you would have had more time to do the other part. But I'm not going to say that,
Yeah.
like, I'm just going to be like, that looks amazing. But we also have to, do this, the whole point of this piece is to convey a certain, message. It's looking pretty crowded over on that area. How about we take this fish, move that over there. Let's balance out the space, move this over here. Like I try to be more like tactical
I love
about
that. I
like-
love that because I feel like as artists in general, we do overthink a lot of stuff, right? And so when you're working, Matt, and you are, just hashing out the details of one element, you kind of can, Roxy, bring it back to the full picture, keep the client in mind, which you're not usually. Sometimes it's really hard to kind of balance those two sides of your brain, like you, the artist, trying to make a piece that you like, and also you trying to make a piece the client likes. You have to keep those two priorities in mind. And I like that one of you can be kind of more focused on the personal artwork and the other one can keep the client in mind because it is a business. So I love that. And I think that's such a cool way to split it, because it's really hard, I feel like, when you're trying to do it all, to kind of quality control yourself.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think in any kind of like creative endeavor, like, the writer needs their editor, that
Exactly.
kind of
Exactly. I
So-
love it. I want to know in the chat, for anyone for all of our viewers, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching on Behance, let me know in the chat if you have a creative collaborator that you go to, and if you have any questions about collaboration, because these two have been doing it for a long time. They're pros. I mean, I'm sure they're still figuring some stuff out, but they have it on lock. So if you have questions, bring it to us. I'll pass it on to them as we continue working on this gorgeous whale shark piece in honor of the #CreateWaves campaign. So yeah, just bring your questions. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to subscribe to Adobe Live's channel so you don't miss part 2 of the stream tomorrow, and any other great stream that we have. Okay, back to our little conversation. I love it. It's like blowing my mind that you guys can help each other out so much, because I feel like I'm always asking just random people in my life to give me feedback. I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you have anything to say?
Right.
And I love that you guys can be
that's
like
true.
aligned.
Yeah. No, I think it is like really important if you can find somebody. Like, I think maybe even
another creative
that
Yeah.
you find like through
Exactly.
a chat, watching a live like this, there's so many different ways that you can find artists that you align with, whether that's online through social media or, finding someone whose portfolio you like on Behance. Like, I think even just following different artists whose aesthetic you like, it, feeds into your education about like how people use spacing. Like we talked about the artists that we really loved, like we really studied their color usage, because there's a way that you can use color in more kind of subtle ways that we're always trying to figure out, actually. Color theory is something that we really love, and you're just always dialing it in or like trying new ways to create certain emotions. We tend to use a lot of bright, fun colors because our work is about bringing together sustainability and joy. So how can you have these kind of eco-themed pieces, but then have them just be really fun and playful? So it's not like, this is about, saving the earth or something that's like,
you don't want to make it too serious where you're alienating people from just the fun of nature in itself and the joy of nature.
Exactly. Yeah. So we really like to use fun and bright colors, but we're also looking at ways too to make sure that it has, some kind of like artistic sophistication to it as well, if we can, or some kind of complexity or a way to bring in fun details through color or little nuances through color.
And one thing I was thinking about, and we're inside of our art studio, but we're lucky that we have this space where there's other artists outside in this kind of collaborative space that we have. And not everyone has access to a creative community like that in real time, but now with the way we're all connected through social media or through Behance, like Roxy said, or even through Adobe Livestream where people are, talking in the chat. I feel like there's a community and there's a shared like lack of like, oh, I'm not alone in these issues of dealing with this client or I'm dealing with this problem, and so is also dealing with that. Like, we as artists, a lot of times we isolate, especially when we're digital artists. We can afford to be like in our studio, in our bed working, but it's nice to have people around, whether in person.
I totally agree. I feel like artists in general, and I feel like maybe it's always been a thing, like for all of history, I feel like art making is kind of personal, like it's a private practice. Like you make the art and then you show the art. It's never been like that in public the
Right.
actual art making process. And I feel like it can be really isolating. And then you compound that with the past couple years of a pandemic. It's been extra isolating, right? Like any community that you might have had just becomes strained.
Yes.
And it's so key to have community to bounce ideas off of. I mean, you guys have like each other to kind of have this automatic everyday kind of partner, but if you don't have that, you can always reach out to friends, art friends. Even I always find like even friends that I have that aren't artists who maybe are creative, like knit or sew or whatever it may be, still have like a perspective that can add something to you or give you some sort of feedback that you might have not seen because you're like so zoned into the project. So yeah, I think having a creative community is key. And we have a really great one here on Behance and on our Adobe live streams. Everyone is so awesome who shows up to our chat. So shout out to you guys in the chat. But I can't agree more. It's essential to have like a community to help you break out of your own mind a little bit, right? Because you can really like fixate as an artist on like the tiniest thing, and it takes someone to be like, you're looking at that, but what about this?
You know, I've been thinking about this kind of like joke that's true for me, that is maybe true for other guys as well, where I say that I have this unique ability to overthink and underthink something at the same time. And so like a lot of time we say like, oh, guys don't, they can't multitask, but like I'm multitasking by doing underthinking and overthinking at the same time. Like, am I doing too much, or I totally forgot to do something else? Like I just mix them all together.
Overthinking one area and completely underthinking the other.
Yeah. It's a tough thing to balance, especially I feel like the creation process versus the critiquing process, because you can't be super like critiquing your work while you're making it because you'll never finish.
Right.
So it's like a total balance, and I feel like you guys have an advantage by being able to split some of those tasks up or trade off. That's really helpful.
So it is, I think, one of the benefits for sure of having the two of us. Like when we're working on a painting, Matt will draw out the composition. Like I guess in a quick process, it's like
that was my next question.
Yeah. Like how do we work together, when we take on a project? Like usually what it is, let's say for the purposes of probably this audience, if it's like the client piece or something that's a commission, we'll have some direction from whoever that entity is, whether they actually have a creative brief or not. Usually it's fairly general for us at this point. It might have a theme, but we're usually responsible for coming up with the concept.
Right.
And so, that from then we'll, just spitball a bunch of ideas back and forth, write them down in a sketchbook. I think there is something like how you said about using like a pen into paper. Like I feel like it drives the thought process a little bit more for some reason. There's just something about it.
The tactileness.
Even
your calendar, you still use paper.
Oh yeah, it's like right here. I still use like a paper planner.
Ooh, I do too. I think it's really something about like it doesn't feel like you're going through a medium. It feels like it's your raw brain on the paper.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you work on something like an iPad or on a computer, it feels like you're translating it into it or something.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like you're taking it into your brain in the same way. I feel like when you're hand drawing it, it really like cements that idea into your mind.
It feels like you're one with the paper.
Something like that. It's wonderful though, whatever it is. But yeah, so we'll jot down, ideas. I like to work in like idea notes form. He likes to work in thumbnail form. So he'll draw out just like tiny little images in pencil of what those might look like. So we'll say like, okay, for example, if it was this whale shark image, like, okay, how about we do one where the whale shark is centered, one where there's a lot of whale sharks. We'll just kind of give a bunch of different options, and then from the thumbnails, we'll narrow it down to which idea we think is strongest. And then I'll just leave at that point and go to answer emails or something like that. And then he'll get to, figuring out some bigger sketches, maybe it'll be 2 or 3, maybe it's just one that's just like pretty solid, and then he'll text me a photo of it and be like, what do you think? And then because I'm in the house with the kid, or I'm running errands, or who knows. I might be in the yard, he might be in the house.
Right.
But like I said, our text feed is our channel, right?
Yeah.
It's like our Slack channel.
That's your Slack.
It's our
That's your
text
Slack.
feed.
And it's really funny is like in those moments that I'm waiting for her response, they're quite tense. I'm just like, ooh, I wonder if she's gonna like it. Like, I think I do.
She's just sitting there
three
thinking,
dots.
I'm watching the dots.
how
like,
do I respond to this? I hate it. Now
I know,
she's never.
is she gonna give me an emoji on this one? Or a thumbs up?
Or she just gives you a thumbs
got?
up. What do you do with that? You're just like okay.
If I'm like,
yeah, if there's a I'm
he's like,
all right.
oh, is that a good or a bad?
All right, here we go.
So interesting.
The suspense.
Yes. I usually feel that feeling when I email it to the client, but you guys have that within yourselves just because you're trying to organize your thoughts around it before you even go to the next phase. Interesting.
Right.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah. It can go a lot of ways.
Yeah. Okay. So you get the sketch. He takes the sketch as far as he wants. I'm assuming still sketch though, right?
Yeah. So we'll do, revisions. I'll be like, okay, that looks great, but I think that, the whale's too big in the composition. I think it would be cool if we did some hand lettered text. Like, how about this phrase would be kind of fun or catchy? Or like, how about because we've been together for a long time and we have a lot of the same influences, we might reference an artist and be like, how about we throw in the colors of so-and-so, but like, let's do like a 70s, like retro aesthetic, maybe like that would be kind of fun. Or, I think one thing is that I'm really confident in his drawing abilities and like what his capabilities are, that that's what's fun about being the idea person, is I get to come up with fun ideas for his talent.
Right. You're like, oh, you should draw this. And even if he's not so sure, he hasn't drawn it a million times before, you're confident it will work.
Exactly.
Actually,
and it will be worth it.
Because for me, that gives me, because a lot of times at the beginning of a project, you'll be like, oh man, this is such a big mountain to climb. And she's kind of like, you'll figure it out. You got
this.
Can handle
you're
the technique. And I'm like, all right, I guess, we've done this before. We just need to trust the process.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing we always say between the two of us.
Yeah, trust the process. And I think that's where, figuring out where your strengths are and what maybe you can delegate or hire someone else to do, or, figure out time block a certain time for certain tasks. Like where I'm the project manager and how we have meetings is a conversation you can just even have in your own head is, I'll say like, okay, this part that we're looking at here, how long do you think that will take you to complete?
Yeah.
Because we still have the text that we need to do and we still need to, render it, with color or something like that. He'll be like, okay, I think this will take me 3 days. I'm like, okay, 3 days. How about for coloring? How long do you think that'll take? For lettering, how long do you think that'll take? Okay, I'm going to give you like a week more than whatever you just gave me because life happens. Something always takes longer than you think it will. Okay, and then repeat the process in your head, like, okay, this will take this long. This will take this long. This will take this, and then add it all together. Give yourself some healthy birth if you can. And then go from there. And so and then we're just constantly checking in like, okay, are we okay? You told me it was going to take 3 days for this. Has it? It's taken 4.
Day 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good pitch. I might lose here. Someone's going to be like, are you for hire? And then I'll lose my teammate.
No, I love it. I think this is really smart. Even if you're watching this and you don't have a collaborator, just thinking about treating yourself like you are kind of like splitting the way you think about it as a project manager and then as the artist. Some things just have to be arbitrary. Like the deadline is arbitrary and you need to work backwards to make sure you can make it happen. Right. You can't let a piece take a month if you only have a week, right? You can't do the same techniques. You can't do the same detail. You just have to pare it down. You just have to be more point blank about it. And I think sometimes as artists can get really emotional about their work. Yeah. But sometimes you have to step back and just be like, we have a week, you can't do what you are so passionate about. Just isn't going to work for this piece. What else can you do?
Yeah. Managing expectations.
That's our new word.
That's another one. Managing expectations. I think,
tell us about managing.
Yeah. Well, I think, in times of COVID, I feel like a lot of people have really come to terms with that too. Like how you thought life was going to be at a certain point and then how things actually are, or
That's
just,
true.
really prioritizing your health and realizing like health is wealth. If you're not healthy, everything else falls on the wayside. We were sick this last week and I didn't get, I think more than 3 emails done just because our kid was sick at the same time too. And it's just like everything else falls away. Like if you don't have your health, it doesn't work.
You don't realize exactly how critical health is until you lose it, right? Until you're out for a week and you're like, oh my gosh, everything I had to get done, it just is impossible. If I'm sick or if I'm slightly under the weather, it just really, really puts a damper on the original plan. So I think, you're bringing up a really good point. And I think it's cool that, you guys have each other. So, if someone's feeling better than the other, can kind of pick stuff up. And then when, that's really handy because, I'm a solo artist and if something gets if I'm under the weather, things just have to get pushed or, change the original project to meet those new expectations essentially.
Right. And I think it's hard too, especially in this kind of time we're living in of social media where it's like you constantly feel like you need to be posting like, oh, I didn't post in stories today. I didn't post about this latest project. I mean, the things I wanted to post in the past week did not happen, right? But it's totally true. You can beat yourself up over it, or you can just be like, you know what, that's life. It will be okay. I will post it tomorrow or next week instead. Like the world is not going to end because I didn't post that thing, last Tuesday. Yes. I'm posting it next Tuesday. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I know. I think a lot of times us creative folks have to remind ourselves like it's okay, like if the recent project you didn't turn out like you wanted, there's always another project. If like things are okay, nothing is finite, you have endless creative like ideas available, executions available. If what you just did wasn't a masterpiece in your eyes, right, there's another masterpiece waiting for you.
And I think that's where some kind of like journal or sketchbook, whatever, like note-taking device, or like just on the app, just like having it on your iPad. We've noticed the value of just having all these sketches of ideas that you just kind of have in your off time that don't really come to realization anytime soon.
No expectation of it being a final piece necessarily, right? It's almost just more like cathartic.
Well, I think we've gone back to sketches that we did years ago, and then they finally became a mural for a client or a poster for a client.
Right, like a lingering idea can come to play to save the day some other time.
Oh, definitely. It's really fun actually, to go through the sketchbook and be like, okay, this client wants this thing, like nothing's coming to my head right now. Like, let's just page the sketchbook and see if it'll trigger something. And sometimes we find a sketch that's just perfect. Like, here we go. We finally get to create this idea. Like, yes, and get paid for it. Awesome.
Double awesome. So cool. So actually something I wanted to ask you, going back to the artwork that we're creating today, but also your artwork in general, is I noticed that you create, like we said before, really intricate pieces. We mentioned about it before about, getting way too tuned in sometimes.
Yeah.
So how do you balance like a sketch so you don't overwork a sketch that's like, let's say, not even been approved as final, right? But you do have so much detail that you want to maybe show the client without getting like too committed to it.
Yes.
Because you don't know if it's gonna be the one. So what do you do in that case? Like, how are you presenting these sketches? Because I saw your artwork and I was like, this is so intricate. How do you go about presenting like a raw sketch for something like that?
Good question. Yeah.
This is actually a pretty solid sketch, I would say.
I would say this level of finish, where I could toggle the opacity on the background and you could see like that initial sketch right there. That might be a good proof of concept thumbnail, but I might send out 3 of those to the client.
Wow, in my eyes, that's like a lot of detail. Like I've seen some other artists who do circles. It would be like a circle of a whale shark, right? Just
true.
Yeah.
With like some dots that say like these are stars.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say actually this sketch there without the colors, maybe more of what we
but I mean,
it kind of depends. A lot of times it really depends on the client, because some clients come to us with complete creative freedom
Got
And
it.
so we're pretty sure we can kind of do whatever we want. So at that point, we
So
might,
in that case, maybe it's worth showing a more fleshed out sketch.
and we would only do one. I think for a lot of the
Got
clients
it.
now, we maybe do one or two.
One or two.
Because
Yep.
we will have the rough, 4 or 5 thumbnails, but we pretty quickly put that down to, maybe
And you
2
have
or
your
3.
favorites too. So
I feel like artists already have their favorites, and it's
They
like,
do.
if you give the client 3 thumbnailyourself they're going to
You're
pick
gonna
the
pick
one
the
that
worst one.
the one that you don't like, right?
They're gonna
So-
pick the worst one. I agree.
So you don't show them that one. Do yourself a favor. Don't
Show
show
them your
Don't show-
actual
yes.
favorites.
Don't show anything you don't want to be picked. That's a good rule.
If they
of
want another one, they'll
thumbnails.
ask for it. If there's something
Yeah.
that they don't like, that they're just like,
That's
could
true.
you throw in one that has palm trees or something? You're like, sure. And then you figure that part out.
What's
like,
been trippy though is we've had a few projects recently where we were surprised by the direction that the client wanted, and we wouldn't necessarily have chosen that route, and we just see
we
it
still
through.
liked it,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't have been like our number one.
Right. And so
Got
we're kind of like, okay, I feel like we're leaving some cool stuff on the, some
Like,
meat
are
on
you
the
sure
bone.
about that? Okay.
Yeah,
all
but-
right.
I think
But
it
then
comes
you
back
push that
to
direction.
you go with what the client wants if that's like they're very set on it, and then you just lean into it with everything you've got, and then in the end it would work out like something different that you wouldn't have tried. And it's kind of
Right.
that idea of like, each project leaves you in a different place skills wise. You've learned something.
Yes.
It's
I
inevitable.
think that's so true. I feel like sometimes if you end up working with a client that has an amazing art director or a
right.
client who really gets the mission of whatever it is and knows what you're good at and knows your strengths,
Mhm.
it can really help
Yep.
bring out the
For sure.
best of you in a new project,
Yeah.
even if you're having doubts about like,
Yeah.
the color scheme or the direction or the concept, but they know you can pull it off in a similar way as to how Roxy, Matt can pull off certain things.
Yeah.
Even if he's not
Yeah.
totally sure, you're helping bring out the
Yeah.
best in him. Sometimes we can get clients that really can figure out how to do that and surprise you.
Yep.
Mhm. No, definitely.
It's a lovely experience when that happens. I definitely feel like it's a special moment and I don't rely on it.
Don't expect it.
Yeah, it's a happy surprise, right?
It's a happy surprise
Yes,
for sure.
we
Yeah.
love that.
No, I think that's one thing. Like you said, they see something in you, and then I would say, don't be afraid to make it your own. Like they might
Mm.
have some suggestions, but they chose you because they like what you do. So
True.
it's like they want you to maybe add something, but to do it in that way that you do.
Mhm.
So like with this recent project that he's talking about, we presented 3 sketches because we liked all of them, but we weren't really sure which one they would want. We had our favorite that they hoped they would go with because we
Right.
thought that was what the audience would like the most. But they chose to kind of skew things a little differently.
Mhm.
At first we were like, oh, I don't know, that might look so much more boring, whatever. But then they're like, well, that's what they want. And then we're like, well, we're just gonna like hype that perspective up
Yep.
a little bit because
Yes.
it went from being like an overhead perspective to being a side perspective, and we're
Right.
like, oh, that's gonna flatten things so much, like I don't know if that's gonna be as cool.
Right.
It changed the tone of the piece,
it did.
which was what was unexpected for us.
Mhm.
But when it redirected the tone and we just leaned into that, there's also still power in, say, like a profile image has a lot more of a raw, has more punch than a 3D like orthographic view, or an aerial view. So you just gotta find the points of where you can punch up the impact on whatever composition you're on.
I think it
And
made
that's
it
what
more
happened.
still.
It did. It created a different sound, right?
A visual
An aura.
sound.
Why don't
I don't
you
know.
can you tell us more about this project so the viewers who are listening about it can maybe go check it out? Is it out
Sure.
yet or is it still under wraps?
It is out. We actually haven't posted about it since I got sick, so you guys will be the first ones to hear it directly from us.
Breaking
actually.
news, yes.
Breaking
It's
news.
on our Behance though.
It is on our Behance. So we had it prepared on there. Do you want to jump to it so we can check it out?
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay. All right. Here
Let's
we
see
go.
if it loads.
Let's see.
I see the
It
spinning
was having a
wheel.
little tricky part loading.
There
Maybe
we
even if you just
go.
go back
I know.
to the little guy
So
there.
strange, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, there it is.
Well,
Okay,
middle
we get
there.
a little preview of it.
in the middle there,
Right.
we're just gonna give you a sneak peek with the small
I
view.
zoom
If
in
you
on
go
it?
to if you go to Matt's Behance, you can see it in
Yeah.
full. But it is
There's a whale
actually
shark.
there is a whale shark in there.
Oh, I see it. I see it even in the thumb, like in the preview.
Yeah. So it is the music tour poster for Jack Johnson, actually.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so this is what you guys were working on. And I feel like from what you were speaking about, turned out to be an amazing collaboration where you created something even better than you expected.
Yep.
Initially.
Yeah.
So
Can I go back?
Amazing.
Oh,
I
sure.
love it. I love it.
I don't know.
Even from there you can see. So you can see that it's a side view of the boat floating on the ocean with all the fish and everything under there.
Yes, and if you're listening right now, if you're watching the stream, Cody just dropped the link to the tour poster in the chat. So go ahead and check it out. In the meantime, we'll continue working on our whale shark piece on Adobe Fresco. I actually coming back to this piece now. What is the next step in your process? So I've been seeing that you've been sketching using the pencil. So what's usually next at this stage? Bring us back to the
Sure. All right. Coming back into this composition, what I've been really enjoying doing is contouring out the using the stripes. Okay, so these whale sharks have these kind of stripe patterns that are really cool. But using those stripes also is a way to contour out the volume of these whale sharks because they have some interesting features. So for example, you look at this whale shark, it has a large hump kind of above its pectoral fins. And it's sort of a mass that kind of grows as it moves from that back fin, pectoral fin over here. And as it moves this way, it kind of grows and then it sort of gently fades into this flat, slipperish kind of shape of the head. So it's a really kind of complex 3D shape that I'm trying to imply using contour lines. So that's where you see I'm doing, for example, you can see, oh, that's a vector brush, or no, that's not. So if I go here, if I were to draw a line flatly across that way, it would really flatten and conflict with this line that I have here.
Right, we lose the shape of that little hump.
So I want to imply the fact that the body slopes away here towards the gill plate, comes up, and then it hits this other mass here. And so it's another form there. And then it returns and goes over towards the other side of the gill plate. And while this is just really loose sketches, it probably won't end up in the final, it will help give me a sense of, okay, when I start putting in my dots, these dots are conceivably following these ribbons that I've created. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. It's just sort of creating slices of these whale sharks. And then also compositionally, like you'll see me from time to time, I'll have one shark drawn and I'll just erase it. I erased one that was over here and added this one just because I want to try to avoid too much repetition in the angle that these sharks are swimming. I want to have sharks swimming from all different angles. I don't want to have this shark seem to be the same as that shark, in other words.
Got it. So that way you avoid kind of repetition in the pattern of the swim pattern, let's call it.
Exactly.
I love seeing how you are sketching out the overall shape, the volume. I feel like a lot of times you see people sketch out just the outlines, but and then just in the next stage, maybe with color or whatever, sketching out the volume. But I think it's really cool to see you sketching out the volume here, especially when you're working with anatomy of something else. It's not, maybe I feel like human is a little bit more common, or even like dog or cat, right? But you're working with whale shark, I feel like is a little bit different. It's a little bit out there. So I think it's really cool that you're really taking the time to study that volume and get it right. Why do you think you are interested in having the pattern, the swim pattern, the way these guys are swimming different? What do you think is the value that
Good
brings
question.
to your work?
Yeah, so I think with every piece, if you're not paying attention to a repetition that's happening, you can kind of create areas where the composition feels heavier on one side, or it feels just a little too
simplistic.
Yeah, simplistic. And I think of it almost like musically, it has like a rhythm to it. And I know it's a visual art form, but there is a certain flow,
visual rhythm,
to it, where you, like, for example, right now I'm having a problem just with the fact that this shark that I drew is like
too close,
sidled up against the head of this shark. And I don't want the mistaken idea to come across that, oh, that's a tiny shark and that's a large mama shark. I don't necessarily think that's true. What I want it to seem like is it's different depths, which is a difficult thing to do when you're not using, say, like atmospheric perspective, where one shark is faded more than the other, which is closer.
Yeah.
But we're just using scale to create the sense of depth. So that's where I think the trickiness is, and I want to sort of nail that.
Right.
So I'm still struggling even with this one. It's maybe just too big.
And I think actually the Jack Johnson poster gave you a little good practice before this, because one of the things that we talked a lot about when I was coming to you about feedback and stuff when we were drawing out the piece in profile is, before we'd had something that was more top down like this, but when it came to the side, the danger was that all the shapes were in profile and looked very flat.
Yes.
And it's like little kids almost, you know how they draw everything like in perfect profile, but it was like me having to kind of pull up images like this for him, like the ones that you were seeing around the iPad, and being like, can we turn the ray so that it's more like on the side, even if we're seeing the boat in, you know, perfect profile, like the fish can still be more, you know, dynamic.
And that's the thing that was really interesting, because doing things really flat is a stylistic choice.
It is,
that can totally work. And it's interesting, like I really almost envy the way people can design using simplicity. And that's, I think, almost the hardest thing to do, is to work in a very simple, very clean, this is the way I access my imagery in my head. It's very 3D and stuff like that, but there's different ways to do it. And our style is just, it really relies on, I think the figure being dynamic.
It's kind of, that I think references your figure drawing background, because there's such an emphasis on volume, and you know, even if you do have a flat style, that's not to say that it's a simplistic style. I think I think that's the part that gets tricky. Like, doing a flat style doesn't mean that you don't have a sense of volume or that kind of thing, right? Like, people who are the most talented at their flat drawings, especially figurative work, like we said earlier, right? Like, if you do the figures wrong in a weird way, it looks off. But there's plenty of people who do flat types of illustrations that are very stylistic, like elongated or, you know, very curvy, but it looks atomically correct because it's consistent and it's true to, you know, anatomy, proportions and things like that. So
that goes back to, like, you know, I feel like when you're in art school, and maybe anyone in the chat, maybe they can confirm if they feel this, but like, I feel like your art school professors generally, they're like, you have to learn all of the intricacies, all of the difficult parts of figure drawing before you can draw a very simple contour drawing. You know, like learning all the rules before you can break them and create a stylized version of whatever it is you want. But your teachers generally try to stray you from stylized versions of things and make you kind of draw true to life before you can break the rules. So, you know, it's hard. And I feel like that's when it comes down to your own artistic taste, right? So like you were saying, Matt, if you like to think with volume and like to think about the anatomy, then you're naturally going to want to draw like this, and you'll be thinking about those things. And other people maybe just have a different way of kind of doing the artistic math. So it's kind of funny to see how everyone problem solves.
It is.
No, definitely.
I would be curious to hear how other people feel about, you know, style and finding style, and then, you know, trying to seek your style, like to actively try to like create a style. It almost is more difficult. Like, it has to just sort of come with time, you know, and just like repetition, and then it just sort of becomes your style. Like, when we were in college, we were looking at other artists, and sort of maybe there was more replication of things going on in college. But now, like, once you've just sort of been out in the world and you're doing work on your own, you start to develop your own nuances.
I mean, I think that's
Touchstones.
how anybody learns, right?
Yeah.
Anything, like when you learn how to play music, you're always playing the classics.
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
Like that's how you learn the skill.
Yeah.
And then it's like
Exactly.
the thing, right? Once you know the rules, then you can break the rules. So
Yes. And I feel like style, which is a big artistic question. I feel like everyone is always seeking their style. It just comes down to your strengths and your weaknesses, right?
Oh,
So if
good,
your
yeah.
strengths are, like you said, detail and
Yeah.
volume and anatomy, that's going to be your style. That's going to define your style. But if your strengths are something entirely different, just working flat, let's say, or minimalism, or then that will be your style, and
Mhm.
as opposed to forcing it, right? So like
Right.
Yep.
if you tried to force yourself to decrease the amount of detail you include in your work, that probably wouldn't be a strength to you. It'd probably be very difficult and just kind of silly for you to even be trying to do that. So if
It's
anyone
definitely
in
more
the
of a
chat,
challenge.
yes, it would be a challenge for you. It would be very unnatural. So if anyone in the chat has any questions for these two,
Mhm.
if you're just tuning in now, we're here on Adobe Live. You're watching Wooden Wave. They're an husband and wife art duo. And we're working on a piece here for the hashtag Create Waves campaign. And we're in Adobe Fresco. So if you're watching from YouTube, drop your questions in the chat. If you're watching on Behance, drop your questions in the chat. We've been talking about everything, and you're watching here Matt create this very intricate piece on whale sharks.
Yeah, whale sharks.
So cool. Oh my gosh. Yes, they are a superhero team, someone asked. So yes, superhero team.
Oh, thank you.
Agreed, everyone. Agreed. Okay. So
Aw, thanks, guys.
Matt, bring me back to this drawing. What
Sure.
phase are we in? What are you looking to improve on at this point? Just give me a little context here where we're at.
Sure. All right. So diving back into the image, I'm almost to the point where I finished all of my contour lines that I was talking about earlier. I feel like I have enough, and this is where I'll double back with Roxy, and I actually haven't heard from you much yet about it, but we'll
critique
decide.
here from Roxy.
Yes, and I'll be waiting. I'll be like, waiting give me some good emojis on this one. I feel the good mojo. But we'll probably be calling it in terms of compositionally how many sharks we have, and if there's any changes I need to make to move one a little bit further to the right. Like it feels like maybe a little lacking in this corner.
Yeah.
And that could be as simple as me adding in sharks that are lower down. I'm also considering like
that was the fast shark. That was the craziest fastest shark I've ever seen drawn ever.
And we could also start incorporating, instead of just sharks, maybe like little fish, because these sharks they eat krill, plankton, but they also will eat small fish, so like a school of fish, and that might be a cool added element to create movement. So again, this piece has got a lot of movement. Go ahead. What do you get? What do you got?
But maybe not too many, because there's going to be the stars.
I'm getting carried away.
One thing that we thought would be kind of fun, but maybe a little confusing, I'm not sure, is that, there are going to be the stars that come in on top. Maybe you can show that for anybody who just joined, who is looking at this, like, what stars?
Yeah, the thumbnail that we're basing this on.
All right, so there's our underlaying thumbnail.
Yeah, so the concept of the stars that are in the night sky on the top, they kind of gradually go down, and then you see that same kind of star pattern, but it appears on the backs of these whale sharks. And just trying to think of how the movement comes down with those stars. We were thinking, maybe they're white on that black background, but when they transition into the white of the middle, we could have some of those dots become black on the white background, and those could become krill.
Something like that.
And then so that's why I advised him to show some of the whale sharks with their mouths open. If you look at the images, it's actually really fun. They have these massive mouths, and you see them feeding to take in these.
It's weird though, because when you look at their side profile, this is what I've been tripping on, is they do have massive mouths, but from the side they look tiny. Look at that.
Yeah, they do look like little tiny mouths.
But the width is where they make up for it.
Yeah.
Jeez, you're so right. That is so trippy to think about.
Yeah.
And then
It's
if
like
you
an
look at the
optical illusion.
bottom,
Yo, here's a good,
So
I
when you
found a
look at the-
3D
There you
render.
go.
Perfect. So that's it open.
yeah.
Um,
And then when you see them from the top down, they curve their mouth slightly up to be able to scoop, so you can see the opening from a top down view, and it's actually
Yeah.
really cute. So that was one of my feedback things, like let's
Right.
show some of them with their mouths open, because it's such a fun pose, and it's a bit more
Perspective,
dynamic
yes.
too,
I think
so
so.
it gives character to them.
Yeah.
Because you do want to have them as individuals, so they're not as pattern based. Like, Escher did have his patterns that intersected, where a lot of them were always the same, but it's nice when there's some
Right.
variation to make it a
Yeah,
little bit more
we're
lively.
kind of, like Roxy said, we are kind of inspired a little bit by the Escher
Transition of-
yes, where he'll have one shape turn into another. And
Yeah.
that's what's happening here. I think the next thing that I want to start doing, now that you mentioned it, I think once we're good on the sharks here, I want to start playing a little bit with that background black and maybe punching it in a little bit. I don't think it's quite yet ready, but I do want to see where that
where the
transition.
shapes start.
Yeah, exactly. How am I going to figure? This is the fun question.
Weaving it together.
Yes,
essentially.
that's kind of
Mhm.
the unknown variable here. Is this area right here in the transitional zone? Like, one thing I was thinking of is maybe these are shadows. Like the black tendrils are sort of operating as shadows.
So what
I
he's
could see
referring
that
to,
for
yeah,
sure.
You know what I mean?
right, because it's depending on how someone's looking at it,
Yeah.
it could look like flames of some kind.
I don't want that.
And we
yeah.
didn't want that, right? So we're thinking like, no, it's supposed to mimic, the shape of the
Yeah.
tails, but I don't know if that's as evident, comes down
Maybe
to
if the to avoid it looking like a flame, if you kind of incorporate the shadow of some of the fins, could break up that
Right.
flame a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think that's
Yeah.
just what's going on, is like in the sketch, it may look like a flame because we're not seeing fins on there's
Yeah.
one like kind of, I can see it in the center, but not on some of the other
Right.
On the
that one.
shadows, essentially.
Yeah.
Like there's a
I-
little bit of a fin there. And I think that really helps
Yes.
break up the illusion of a flame. So,
So
that's a
the
tricky
creative
one.
problem solving.
It's so tricky. I'm thinking like the other things you could do is like, do we want to use a blend? Do we want to go in that direction, or we want to keep it graphic? Or like I have the implication of these like tiger stripes, these lines, which kind of interact with the shark's stripe patterns, and those could just become more dense as we move upward.
That's
and then it
true.
just becomes black. You have less of those striping patterns here, and they could kind of represent like the sand bottom, because
Mhm.
it's
The striations.
striations of the sand, and then all of a sudden it becomes so dense that we're in a black night sky, and then I'll
Ooh,
avoid
there's
the-
a lot
the
to tackle
flames.
conceptually here. There's a lot of decision making.
I'd like to hear
Right.
some ideas from the group if possible.
Yes, if
Wow.
anyone in the chat has any ideas on ways to kind of have these whale sharks emerge from
Yeah.
the ocean into the sky,
Yeah.
let us know in the chat. I'll be sure to let you know once ideas start rolling in. I am going to
Just charged my Apple Pencil. I saw the notification, 5%.
There we go.
Charge that thing up.
it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone.
So quick.
So
Right? Always be
um,
charging.
Yeah.
totally. So can you tell me a little bit about, so I see that you worked all in one layer for your sketch. So
Yes.
I'm wondering, what is your layering process? At what point do you decide
Mhm,
to break into another layer? Adobe Fresco lets you work in unlimited layers. So
Oh,
I'm
that's so
curious
great. That's the best
what you're
part
doing
right
there.
Amazing.
Yeah, because this is kind of the thumbnail sketch. I really just need one layer for the pencils. But what I probably will do is I'll start for the colors. So I could create another layer right now, and I'll move that underneath. Real simple. And that's when we'll dip into I'll hit brush, and that should toggle my chunk
Got it.
feature.
Yay.
And I'll just start adding that in. So that's the simple nitty gritty to it. Now maybe I'll turn this guy down a little bit more or off.
Mhm.
And I could just start, filling in with, make sure I'm still on chunk. I've got my brush settings. I can maybe go a little bit smaller on the brush. I can get more detail. And what's great is because I have brush and then I have my keyboard Bluetooth, I'm just going to go back and forth between, oh, is it not?
Uh-oh.
Technical
Wait,
troubles.
I just had to repair it. There it is. Okay, we're back on board, folks.
We're back.
You know why? Because I was
repaired the problem by repairing the.
Oh, that's a good one, Roxy. So I'll just go ahead and I'll be hand in hand, eraser, undo, and brush. So those are the two most. I'm on the correct layer. Yes, those are the two most used functions for me. Is undo. So I rest my hand on the Alt or the Command key and the Z button. Plus I have my pinky going back and forth, or my pointer finger going back and forth between E and B. And I'll just go E. I'm gonna erase that. That was too close. Back to B. I'm gonna re-add that in. And I don't like the way that looked. Undo, 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 undo.
Got
and that's how I work.
Okay. So very natural,
very
intuitive, right? Like you're just like
so.
Really assessing every brushstroke as you go.
I
wanted to ask you, so I see that here for this piece you're working in black and white. I think the final you envision it in black and white, given we're talking about stars and sea. Do you generally work in black and white before you move to color? Or if color is a bigger part of the piece, are you working in color at this stage? Tell me a little bit about how you introduce color.
You want to dive in on that one?
Sure. Yeah, so usually the sketches are in black and white, or sometimes he actually, depending on the project, sometimes he really likes to just sketch with pencil to paper in like a blue pencil or some other color pencil. Yeah,
the non-erase
like a
photocopy blue. Yeah.
Got it.
Pencil.
Do that.
I think too, because sometimes he likes working in blue pencil, because when he really starts to articulate the line work that will stay, then he'll go over with a darker pencil or even like a pen to point some things out.
Something nostalgic to blue pencil for me as well.
It is the best too. It's so creamy. It's such a creamy pencil. I don't know what they put into it, but it's a soft pencil.
It feels less scary too.
Fuzzy magic.
You're like, oh, it's just blue.
It's not black, right? It's
not black.
We're in between. We're thinking about it, you know?
Right. Non-committal.
Yeah,
you know, exactly. It is very non-committal. Yeah. I really agree with that.
It's the first draft pencil, you know, it's like, this isn't the final that you're sending to the editor type of thing. So you know, usually we'll draw it out and then bring that into the iPad and then be able to do like the final sketch over that. Depending on what the project is, we'll just submit those sketches as is. If we already have some strong feelings about color, we might put those in there. I think because our color palette is like pretty bright, colorful pieces, people kind of know what to expect from us, so they expect there will be a lot of color, because we don't usually work in black and white. That's not usually a question of how our work will come out. And then once we get approval on the sketches, then we'll just really dive into color.
Got it. So if this were, let's say, a color full piece as opposed to black and white, would you be doing this in color as opposed to with the black? Like, would you go straight into color, or are you doing like black color blocking or something? Yeah,
I'll do color. And then what's great about Photoshop is you can alpha lock and you can just change your colors. Yeah, and that's what's great. So you don't feel like, oh, I've wasted my time for the last 3 hours working with the wrong colors. We'll start working in those colors pretty much immediately after the initial pencil sketch is approved.
Okay,
but the first sketch is always just pencil.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know, like when it's starting to happen. Okay, interesting. I know this is an exception because you guys usually work in, I said we, like, you know, all three of us.
Yeah, you're on the team now.
Yes, us on the team, we usually work in color, and this one's an exception. But I love to hear just like all the intricacies of what's going on, especially because you guys do have such colorful, intricate pieces. I'm like, when does this stuff start coming into play?
Right.
Because it's just, I find it fascinating, and we're getting a little live glimpse as to how these pieces come together, which is super special. I actually wanted to read you from the chat a suggestion to avoid the flame illusion.
Yes.
I'm gonna read it. We're gonna read it together, and we can figure out exactly what it means. I'm having a hard time envisioning it, but I think there's something here. Okay. Okay. So this is from Alexander. Shout out Alexander in the chat. Thanks for joining. So their suggestion is, here we go. If you imagine our POV being the projection point for a lantern light, we could have hard shadows occur as they move beyond the light source. That way you'll have a hard line shadow occurring and breaking up the flame like shape. Instead of pointy ends, you'll have horizontal waves that go atop the sharks. So I think it's something with like the shadow of the waves, maybe. If the light is
that'll break
at the bottom of our piece.
I could
something
see that.
like that. So just a suggestion for you. Thank you, Alexander, for your comment and your perspective. And
I mean,
that's great. That's an awesome
if you
suggestion.
think about it too, like a lantern, they're thinking about like a color, a light source like a lantern would have a soft projection of light, not so much like a spotlight, which would have a crisp shadow. So maybe that's kind of what he's intoning, is the idea of like it being like, it could be a softer shadow, and then you don't have those tendrils.
Yes, that's true, because a flame is it has sharp edges. So if you had a softer light, you would kind of avoid that and create softer shadows. So that's definitely one way to approach it. And then we also have this question here from Cody Bear that I think is really, really interesting. So the question is, Matt, what's your favorite color palette to work in? And Roxy, what's your favorite color palette to work in? Just curious if you guys
pitting
have
us against
different
each other,
ones or the same, or what's going on.
You can have
just kidding.
differences in opinion.
No. Why don't you go first? That way I can see what mine is.
Oh, you're gonna one up her.
I'm not sure if his is gonna differ than mine.
I think ours is gonna be pretty similar. Should we do it on 3?
Yeah, I feel like if you guys have been working together for years, you might have a similar preference, but we'll see. Let's see.
I think for me, I favor muted tones. So, but it's hard to say that and not have people picture either like pastels or like grays. But what I mean is, I'm like trying to think, what do I have?
Nothing.
I don't know. Is that
just like less saturation, maybe?
Less saturated, but also including a touch of gray or brown in it to make it more neutralized. So it's not necessarily a pastel turquoise like this might actually be, but something that has more gray or brown in it to just give it a little bit more
indecision.
It sounds classy.
It
sounds very classy. It sounds
earthy, little earth tones, so I like, fun colors. I'm not just talking about, let's say, skin tones or neutrals in that sense, but like I love a good turquoise. I love, rich greens and that kind of thing, but I don't like, or not that I don't like them. I just don't prefer like primary colors or things at full saturation.
I think saturation was a good
that
way
was
to describe
a good way to
it.
describe it.
And that's what you're saying when you say like add a little touch of gray or a warmth to it.
I pretty much add brown to everything.
Right. I think that's pretty much the same thing for me, but I like to create the metaphor that I like my colors to have a little bit of indecision in them, and that you look at it and you're like,
is that a blue or
a green? Is it blue? What did they do to create that?
Okay, so like is it red or orange? Like which color is it?
Is it like turmeric, versus turmeric versus like yellow or orange? So, and within those colors, we like to try to have a little bit of analogous colors, kind of like I love the play of two similar analogous colors next to each other, and then it's complementary,
right?
So two warm turquoises, a little bit stepped up in gradient or in saturation or hue, and then on the other end, like bring in a warm yellow that pops as the stars or something like that. So that would be my flavor.
Like you were saying, that turmeric with the teal, turmeric and the teal is a good combo for sure.
Sounds like a good tea.
The warm and the cool.
That sounds like a boba place that needs to be open.
There would be a long
or something, or
long line
maybe.
that boba place.
Yes, I like it. I like it.
That does sound good. a boba place that also sells like crystals or something. It kind of sounds like it needs to
a
have
little
some other
earthiness.
And-
Yeah, I think
and-
you're right. I
like
think you're right.
another like fun thing, like that's kind of unexpected. Like,
Or is this a crystal shop?
Crystal
Or
shops.
something, you know?
but then it
Like
happens to
something
have
like that.
boba, which is awesome.
I think it sounds more like an ice cream parlor that has all their flavors in Pantone instead of like
Yes, and it's like every flavor
That'd
is
be
like
awesome.
rooted in an
Yeah.
earthy like element. It's not just
Yeah.
vanilla. It's like
yeah.
I get that. I can see
You
it. I
guys-
can see it happening.
Vanilla bean.
Do you guys have chocolate? And then the guy's like,
No,
what's
just
the hex?
turmeric.
What's the hex pattern? I don't
What's the hex code?
I don't know what chocolate is. You gotta
I
come.
love it. I love seeing how you guys can bounce these color palettes off of each other. I feel like Roxy, maybe you tone down some of the colors if it's a little too crazy. That's the feeling I'm getting. And Matt, I feel like you add the punchiness in the pieces. So that's amazing. I love seeing how you guys like complement each other. So yeah, great question, Cody. Amazing. And one question, just like while we're here in this color world, what is your favorite color? That's like for each of you. Do you have one single favorite color? An intense
If
question.
I had to pick, it would be in the
Teal.
teal realm.
Yeah.
Like the color of our house is a muted
Yep.
teal.
Oh, tell 'em.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
house
okay.
color.
Yeah.
We went
And
through a
you, Matt?
whole. Yeah, it's pretty much a little bit grayer maybe teal, but I think it would be like she mentioned our house. And we're building.
Wow,
If
you
you
guys
looked at
are
the
so
paint
aligned.
If you looked at the paint swatch though, you would think like that's such a gray color.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
swatches are deceiving.
They
We
are.
had-
They really are.
Oh man, we picked one swatch and we painted our house that color and we're just like, whoa, that is way too mermaid. Like
That's
that's
mermaid.
that's not gonna work.
And there's nothing wrong with
right.
mermaids.
There's nothing wrong with
No,
mermaid.
but if
It
you
would-
didn't want that, yeah.
Yeah.
it would make an excellent color for an ice cream shop. If we ever opened
There
an
we
ice cream
go.
shop, it would be that teal. But that
Okay.
was not for
The
our
metric
house.
was like, do we want to come home to a mermaid house
House.
every night? Like,
Yes.
no, I don't think that's what we want. But they're not the same mermaids
Or-
I've read.
yes, or
Yeah.
it looks like
We
one of your
both-
kids picked it out or something.
Yeah, something like that.
We knew what we were going for and that wasn't it. So it's like, okay, let's bring it back. Like we're gonna have to pick something way more grayed out. And then when you put it up there,
Mm.
it's, just looks like a nice teal.
Oh, here's another metaphor that I always like to drop in, like mixing it up. So like with that color that we picked for our house, the problem we felt with that color was that it was very loud. And what we wanted was a color that listened. And it was like, when you look at a color that's very, very saturated, it's screaming, I'm turquoise. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of pretty turquoise back there, but the color of our house is even more. And when we finally mixed down the color to what we wanted, really neutralized it, it became quiet. And it was like a house that you were like, oh, it's like, I can be really
Calming,
relaxed here.
yes.
It's a listening color,
It's a listening
not a
color.
screaming color.
I love that. Do you guys apply that kind of thinking to your pieces
A relationship.
in general? Because I feel like you mentioned quiet and listening as a descriptor of another piece that you said you were working on. So I'm wondering if
Mhm.
you approach color from like a mood-based perspective often.
I think we do. Like in this one, we were thinking, should we put color in it? And we're thinking, the black and
Mhm.
white has a nice stillness to it. And then it lets the graphic quality, show itself a bit more. And if anything, we would add maybe a little bit of yellow for the stars.
Mhm.
In the Jack Johnson poster that we showed, it had to be a 4-color drop because it's a screen print. And so
Mhm.
that was actually a really good example of the
Right.
colors that we prefer,
Oops.
where it's like those muted turquoises and then that soft yellow for the moonlight.
So I'm gonna pick a yellow. We'll
so-
go like,
Yeah.
I
So
don't
just, like picking colors that emit that
Or-
kind of,
be there.
mood,
What do you
vibe,
think?
atmosphere.
yeah, that we were trying to go for. Sorry, I was almost going to point out
Yeah.
the yellow.
Oh,
You were like, that yellow's too yellow.
I was just gonna be like,
Speaking of which,
yeah.
Amazing. I love that you guys are thinking about color in that way. I feel like it definitely comes through in the energy that your pieces give off. And thinking about color in the way of like emotions just adds another element, like it makes your piece more dynamic, right? Because you're thinking about it in all its sensory glory.
yes.
Which sometimes color can be an afterthought if you have a really strong base drawing, you know, which you
Right.
guys do have really strong technical drawing. So it's like you could
Thank
let
you.
color go to the wind if you wanted to.
Right.
But it's cool to
Thanks.
think about it, and at every piece, think about exactly how you want to purposefully execute it. Matt, tell me what you're doing here. give us a little bit more insight as to your process right now. Just as a
Okay.
heads up, we've got about 10 minutes
All right.
left. So tell us what we're doing here.
Cool. So we are, since we've kind of gotten to the point where the sharks are delineated enough, I think it's a good time to start incorporating some of the other assets. So we've already included our sky. We have our sky here, and I'm toggling the opacity up and down just so that I can kind of go in and erase some of that black sky from areas where it's bleeding into the shark anatomy. But then
Got it.
I also want to add in some stars just because it's talking about color. All this color talk has gotten me feeling like, oh,
Add some in there.
I'm
See how
craving
it
some
works.
color.
kind of hungry for some color here. Yeah.
Yes.
And I am curious how we're going to incorporate color, or if we're going to incorporate color on the whale shark itself, because they do have
They're kind of like
dots.
a blue gray. Don't they look like it? Or am I making
Yeah.
it
They're
up?
kind of
Yeah.
they're kind of
Gray.
monochromatic in a
Yeah.
way. They're gray and white, but we are working in a phantasmic kind of setting here where
That's
we
true.
could, I think we could interpolate stars into dots. And that is kind of the beauty of the story behind this piece, where we're referencing the technology that the Hubble Space Telescope has developed, that scientists have created for the Hubble Space Telescope, that helps scientists, astronomers, identify star patterns in what would be an impossible task. The algorithm just, it picks out triangles in the stars, and it's able to re-identify exact stars time and time again based off of any photo. So the scientists now are finding that marine biologists can use the same program to identify
Individual whale
individual whale sharks, because
So cool.
they're all different with their star patterns or their dot patterns.
sharks.
I love the concept here. It's like
I don't know if we'll
scientists
find
working
there.
together, right? Astronomers working with marine biologists to identify whale sharks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if in your research you found out what is the value of identifying the whale sharks, because
Very
we're
good
speaking, this whole stream is about ocean conservation. So I'm just wondering if you have a little bit on that.
Yeah.
If not, we can always look it up.
Oh no, yeah. I kind of enjoy talking about these sort of things, and Roxy too.
Mhm.
The value of knowing which species, which individual is which in the shark population is that scientists can track their movements. Very little is known about whale sharks. They're very mystical and beautiful, but also hard to study because they come and go, they migrate,
They travel alone.
massive distances, and then they'll come together to feed. Even in terms of where they breed or how they do it or how often they're making babies, like all those sort of things
I
are
don't
important.
think they've ever seen
They
a
haven't seen
whale
a
give birth.
whale shark
A whale shark
give birth.
Yeah, because they've seen other whales. They've seen whales give birth. They've seen
I've
sharks
just seen
give
other
birth,
sharks give birth.
But not whale sharks.
but not whale
Yes.
sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then lastly, this was kind of cool, is I was reading about how whale sharks they're kind of unique for this ability, and I mentioned it earlier, they have this ability to regrow a fin if it's partially chopped off. And that's something that, scientists are interested in that for
Regenerative
regenerative purposes, but also just on the idea of, like, we talked about manatees getting hit in Florida where you're from, and scientists sort of need to be able to track individuals to see how healthy the population is, and then also see if they're recovering from certain things. So it's just data. It's just, science is all about data.
Mhm.
But on a more personal level, I think it's just beautiful to be able to maybe someday be able to, like, pull up an app and track where your, like, favorite whale shark is that you've adopted, and know that they're individuals, not just an icon of fear like a shark oftentimes is.
Right. Yeah, it gives it like this personal connection that you could possibly have with it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool to see that just something as quote simple as being able to track a whale shark. It's just going to be able to give you so much information about a species that is a mystery, because you can, like you were saying, just like maybe one of its fins was cut off and you can see how long it takes to grow, or if it does or doesn't.
Yes.
Definitely.
And I think that's so neat. And I once again, I'm going to repeat this. I think it's really cool that astronomers can kind of like pass this off to marine biologists.
Yeah.
Right?
I also wonder like how that happened. If there was like an astronomer who was like, let me look at whale shark. Like, I wonder how it came to be that they noticed.
Other thing has dots or something.
Yeah, like, what other things has dots that we can scan with this crazy technology and see if it works, you know? I bet that there's like flowers or something you could, you know, like I'm just trying to think.
Totally.
So I think it's really interesting, and I'm amazed that you're able to kind of distill all of that into one piece of work here. I think that's really cool. You can definitely see all of that inspiration coming through in this intricate whale shark drawing, I'm calling it, that you're putting together. Digital painting could be said as well. So this is super exciting. I am mystified. Can you tell us right now what you're doing to this shark? For those who maybe didn't catch it earlier.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. So I am diving into this shark and I am contouring out the really interesting kind of hump that they have on their back. I don't know how else to describe it. If maybe let's go to another reference image here. Yes. So we dive in on this reference image, and I wish I had the touch controls so you could see me kind of highlighting that pectoral mass that moves from the tail, the back tail, all the way up to kind of like the forehead of the shark.
Past the gills or something.
Yes, exactly. Up above the gills. And it's almost like, I think of it as almost the musculature.
It's like a ridge.
Yes.
Wide ridge.
And then if you look, they have these beautiful like channels. Look at that one. So
yes, those ridges, they look so nice.
And they're built for, they're not when you think of a shark, these aren't fast and swimming frantically. They're very slow. They move like whales in that way. They're just like just cruising along,
and they're so large,
and they're really efficient. And so like some of the largest animals on earth are whales and sharks, and they're large because they just have to like efficiently get a lot of food, and so they're efficient with their energy by just swimming slow. And they got these large side fins that operate as like wings. I don't know, I could just nerd out on it.
Lovely, majestic animals that you've been able to highlight throughout this stream. Now, I know that we'll be back here tomorrow to finish this piece. So can you tell me what we can expect in terms of like what you think we'll be covering tomorrow?
There's the
like a minute?
Okay. I think in a really quick summation tomorrow, what we'll try and do is really fine tune how the sky is gonna, like the contrast and the ability of the sharks to not seem like they're losing their lines. Like right now they are, because the opacity. And that's gonna come down to, if we go back to our original thumbnail, which was here, it's gonna just have like more contrast. And I don't know. We'll see.
You're gonna have to problem solve that part. Yeah. So I love it. I feel like you guys have shared so much with us here today. Matt, watching you draw and just like discover and dissect the anatomy here of the whale shark, composition that we've seen you play with, just even the dynamics and making sure that there's movement in this piece. You've shown us so much of your process before we even get to like the other half, right? Because we got to mostly really develop and fine tune a sketch, and tomorrow we're going to see it all come together. So you've shared so much about your process, and Roxy, you have shared so much with us about how you guys work together. We found out so much about just everything that comes with being an artistic duo. So you guys have been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're
It's
welcome.
been so cool. And I can't wait to do this all again tomorrow. Now, remember, friends, we'll be back tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific for part 2 with Wooden Wave in honor of the Adobe Creative Waves campaign. Now, stick around for the Premiere Pro Creative Challenge with Wojtek Plicha. Stay tuned for that. Don't go anywhere. And remember, join us tomorrow morning here on Adobe Live for 2 special streams in partnership with San Francisco Design Week. So don't miss that. But other than that, thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for joining the stream, for showing us your process. And we'll be here tomorrow, same time, same place, everyone. I'll see you then. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.